Private sale of grain rations by any soldier was also punished. It was also regulated that food allowances for officers and private soldiers be different. The bamboo slips finally revealed that in the state of Qin, grain rations for the army were supplied by the state. When Qin launched its war against Chu, it maneuvered an ever larger number of troops, including the two brothers Heifu and Jing. The situation on the open battlefield in the state of Chu can be imagined. Banners and flags flying, men shouting, horses neighing, troops everywhere. Providing the daily necessities for these 600,000 men must have been an endless transport line.
征伐楚国的这个战争呢，我们算下来，它每天按照这个当时的运输规格，一车25担的话，那么每天就需要2660多辆车运送这个粮草。那么如果运程超过4天的话，那么在这条这个粮路上运行的车辆就应该在1万辆以上。
According to the history books, the grain ration needed for one soldier was about 20 kilograms a month. The war in which the Qin conquered the Chu lasted for about 2 years. The grain needed amounts to more than 500 tons. If Qin didn't have a developed agricultural system, it would not be able to produce this huge amount of grain and would not be able to run a war on such a scale. Luckily enough, the bamboo slips made by Xi provide leads for the study of agriculture in Qin. The legal articles make it clear how agriculture in Qin was governed over 2,000 years ago.
云梦秦简的田律里面一开始啊，他是提到了是吧？天呢，如果是下了雨了是怎么样啊？雨的范围是怎么样？那应该怎么样上报？应该怎么样管理？它都有规定，都有一系列的规定。
When sowing, 2 2/3 dough of seeds per mu should be used for rice, 1 dough for cereal or wheat, 2/3 of a dough for red beans, and half a dough for soybeans. If the land was particularly fertile, the amount of seed used could be a little less.
那么这些个都是这个我们可以相信是根据当时呢，在这个关中啊，这个主要的秦的这些土地农田的地区。 啊，经验的结果，它不是随随便便规定。
The state governed the farming in a detailed and concrete manner, going as far as setting up laws to ensure that all peasants adopted the most advanced farming technology. At the time of the warring states, draft cattle began to be used instead of manpower to plough the land. The significance of this was as great as when tractors began to replace cattle and horses in modern time. So farm cattle held a vitally important position in the policy of farming and fighting. It was written on the bamboo slips that each county should have its number of farm cattle registered. If more than 3 farm cattle died in a year due to improper breeding, the owner would be found guilty, and the officers in charge as well.
对耕牛它是非常重视的，一个每年要进行4次的评比，如果你评成下等，那么马上就跟你要进行处罚。
If one were in charge of raising 10 mature cattle and 6 out of them turned out sterile, that person was found guilty of a crime. Related people were punished respectively.
你不能拼命把它跟，还能让它吃草。如果是跟了地以后，牛消瘦了一寸，就打你使用牛的人施下鞭子，那都非常严格。
The historians knew that Qin had strict and complicated laws. However, the bamboo slips discovered in Yunmeng clearly and vividly showed people to what extremes these laws went. According to the law, when the tools the peasants borrowed from the local government became worn out after long usage, the local government should not ask for compensation on their return. Why should the state attach such importance to iron farm tools? This big pit used to be the tomb of a Qin king. In the early 80s, archaeologists found in this tomb a large amount of iron farm tools. It was concluded that anything buried with a king must have had great value at that time. So, It seems the iron farm tools at the time of Qin were no ordinary implements. When the army was still fighting with weapons made of bronze, Qin encouraged people to make use of iron farm tools. So the iron tools were a revolution, like farm cattle. Qin is probably the Chinese vanguard in the use of iron tools. At a time of owner peasants, Qin successfully managed the microcontrol of agriculture with these rigorous laws. It was quite advanced in terms of management, even to the present-day eye. This advanced management resulted in highly developed agriculture. However, due to the limited area of the kingdom, even this developed agriculture still could not support a huge army that was expanding day by day. That was a headache for the state's policymakers. 85 years before Qin unified the country, at the palace in Xianyang, the Qin Prime Minister Jiang Yi had a bitter debate with the general Sima Zuo over whom should be the first enemy to be conquered. The former was for Han State in the east, and the latter was for Bashu. The then Qin king adopted Sima Zuo's suggestion and conquered Bashu. The history that followed proved the fact that this was a far-sighted decision and paved the way for the success of unification. Bashu, now Sichuan Basin, has been a natural breadbasket over the past 2,000 years. Once Qin occupied Bashu, it had sufficient grain reserves for the army. According to the historical records, dozens of years later, when Sima Zuo attacked the state of Chu, the Qin army came down along the Yangtze River with 10,000 ships carrying 6 million hu of rice. However, over 2,000 years ago, the Chengdu Plain was not able to provide a steady supply of grain to the Qin army. The Min River often flooded and droughts also occurred. After Sima Chu, Li Bin came to Bashu as the executive chief. It was this man who made this fertile plain the richest of all. Li Bin had a weir made at a certain section of the Ming River, dividing the water flow into two. When the flood arrives, the water flows over the dam and passes down along the dry riverbed. And when drought occurs, the water is led through this narrow Baopin Pass to irrigate the fertile land in the Chengdu Plain. This was the greatest water conservation project in ancient China, known as Dujiangyan.
都监修成以后，时无荒年，天下谓之天府也。就四川叫天府之国，就是这时候造就的。
This ingenious water conservation project virtually ensured the highest possible grain production. After this project, grain production was far higher than that of the other states, but the Qin rulers were still not yet satisfied. In 246 BC, the would-be first emperor of Qin took power. It was time to unify the country after 100 years of building the power of the state. The weak Han state was the first target to be attacked, but things didn't turn out to be as simple as that. The capital of Qin state was Xianyang, which was in the plain in the middle of Shanxi. This area was the heart of the country, but the grain reserve there was not sufficient due to lack of rainfall. The then Qin king, Yingzheng, had always been worried about this. One day, a man named Zhang Guo came from the state of Han. He suggested to King Yingzheng that he dig a canal to link the Jing River and the Luo River so that the water from the Jing River could be used to irrigate the dry land by the side of the Luo River. Then there should be no fear of drought anymore. The canal would run as long as 250 kilometers and would cost a huge amount in materials and manpower.
郑国的这个建议马上就得到秦王的响应，说：“哎，这个主意好，我就派你做总工程师，你给我修这条渠。”
Even now, the vestiges of this construction are still visible in the central plain of Shanxi. According to archaeologists, the huge stones now found in the Jing River were leftovers of the dam constructed by Zheng Guo. This mud dam is evidence of the canal.
修到半路发现，哦，这是原来是个阴谋啊，消耗自己的国力啊，那么于是就要把这个郑国杀掉。
But in the middle of construction, the first emperor of Qin realized that it was Zheng Guo's secret scheme to use up his state strength so that he couldn't attack the Han. Still, he spared the spy Zheng Guo and let him go on building the canal. As stated in the historical records, Zheng Guo's canal was over 250 kilometers long and would irrigate a land of 280 mu. It was another major water conservation project after the Dujiangyan. It turned the middle of Shanxi into a fertile land and marked the completion of 3 major breadbaskets for Qin. It was in the year when the canal by Zheng Guo was built that the first emperor of Qin launched the general attacks to unify the country. The Han, who had been behind the plot, was the first to be destroyed. The 2 wooden letters sent from the soldiers at the front to their family in the rear during this war for reunification were the earliest family letters discovered in China. The writers of the letters were Heifu and Jing. The war took place at Weiyang County in present-day Henan province. The distance between the front and the family was approximately 300 to 400 kilometers. Fortunately, the family letters from the front reached their destination. Many people were mentioned in Jing's letter. The one he missed most was his newly married wife.
经提了这个心腹，心腹呢就是他新结婚的妻子啊，他妻子。那么这样的话呢，你可以见到他结婚了不是很长的时间啊，就出征了啊，他非常想念他的妻子，这个大家很容易体会他的心理。
Heifu, in his letter, sent his regards to his sister and some others, but mostly worried about his mother. He asked his brother Zhong to take good care of her. The 2 younger brothers were serving in the army, while the elder brother was at home taking care of his mother. It can be imagined how happy the mother and the brother would have felt on receiving the letters from Heifu and Jing. Summer came, and with it the heat. The sons far away at the front were still in their winter clothes, and they had spent all their money. Their mother at home must have been very worried. The letters were found in the tomb of the eldest brother, Zhong. In ancient times, people would have their dearest possessions buried with them.
为什么这封信这样的信专门要保留下来啊？而且在这个棺里头放在很重要的位置啊。那么这个恐怕呢，就是他们可能这个寄信的人不在了啊，寄信人也可能战死了或者怎么样，他为了纪念他把它保留下来。这时候当然只是我们推测了啊，不过我想是很可能推测。
The fate of this family probably gives us an example of the life of thousands and thousands of common people in remote history. They had a family the same as we do. They had joys and sorrows. Under the policy of farming and fighting, they had only 2 things to do: go to the front or cultivate land. It can be assumed that in Qin, every man was part of the army. Qin mobilized the entire country to fight.